I'm just going to kind of give a little bit of an introduction to the book for people who maybe didn't read it yet, or didn't read it anyway. At the launch, it was launched in the Stoll Writers' Week in June this year. Martin Delaney from Original Writing Publishers said that the book is full of smells. And it's true, that there is lots of smells in the book, because where I grew up in the markets area, there was different kinds of smells everywhere, We lived beside the fish market and the fruit and vegetable market, and the carton chicken processors was there as well, and Jameson's distillery was just up the road, and then Patterson's match factory was just around another corner near Smithfield. So all these smells were, I think it actually, when I started writing the book, it helped me that I could remember the smells. And you can just imagine the concoction of all those different smells, Guinness's was down the quays, and depending on which way the wind was blowing, you'd be getting the waft from Guinness's as well. So the book is set around the markets area and Greek Street in particular. I was raised myself in an extended family, and that would have been very common in the inner city at the time, in the 50s and 60s Dublin. It was very common for the eldest in a family to live with a grandmother, So I used to go between the three households. I went to my granny, who worked in the Daisy Market as a fruit and vegetable dealer. I lived with her some of the time. Sometimes I stayed with my other grandmother on the south side. She lived in the one in Cook Street Flats. And then I would stay with my own family as well. So I kind of went between the three households, so it was an interesting kind of a mix to see three different households, because my grandmothers were always much better off economically than my own mother, because, well, one of my grandmothers being a fruit and vegetable dealer, she was economically independent and she always had money, she always had enough money, whereas my mother was always skimping and going to the pawn and everything, Then my other granny on the other side, on the south side, she would have had, she had a British Army pension, because my granddad was in the British Army. He fought in the Great War, the old King Shilling. There's a chapter in the book about the King Shilling as well, about me finding out about the King Shilling, because it was a big secret, it wasn't something that people talked about at the time. There was a lot of shame around having a relative in the British Army. Chapters there's the new baby and the holy angels follows after that, so I'm going to try and read from a couple of those. They're all around the baby. They say she cried, but then she didn't cry. Her eyes are closed. She's all sudsy and floppy in the basin, and her little hands kind of hang. Patty tries to give her her small finger to grip, but her little hand is wide open and cold, like a doll's hand. They wrap her in a towel and dry her. They shake on Johnson's baby powder, then they put on the clean nappy and baby vest. All the time they're dead quiet. Now it's the white lace christening robe with the mother of pearl buttons. They fold over the crochet christening shawl into a three-quarter shape and wrap her up real snug. Why is she getting christened today, Patty wants to know. And how come her ma was still in bed, and how come it's not Sunday when babies usually get christened? The grannies say nothing, like they don't hear. They keep passing the baby backwards and forwards to one another, like past the parcel. Granny Connor first, then her other granny, then Granny Connor again. It's like they don't want to let her go. She's gorgeous in old white robes. Perfect, only her little lips are a bit blue, Granny Connor says. They say prayers then. They kneel down in front of the chairs and make the kids kneel as well. At the scullery window, they see the cool ambulance coming back, with the two cranky-faced nurses with the blue berets plonked sideways on their heads. A crowd of kids are gathering near the door. One of them starts to climb up on the ambulance bumper. Then another one. Freezing out it is, with puddles of ice under the clotheslines. Young fellas digging them up with sticks. The nurses give 2 hard knocks, but this time they won't let them in, so they keep knocking. Nosy old bitches, Granny Collar says, peeping through the letterbox. She says they want to take the baby, but they won't let them, not until they're good and ready. Don't let them take Olive Elizabeth, Patty says. They lie her down in the Moses basket. She's dead still, like the bride doll that's under Granny's bed in the cardboard box. People come down from the balconies with coats wrapped around their shoulders. They want to see the baby. Patty is allowed into the bedroom then. Her ma's sitting up smoking in bed in her slip and cardigan. Her eyes are half closed. They blink like a doll's eyes, down, up, down again. Go away, she says when Patty asks her, does she want tea? Get out of that, shut that door. It's the coldest, saddest winter she can ever remember. There's ice on the window pane, and the trees in the winter garden look blacker, and the grey looks greyer. The clothes are stiff on the wash lines outside, trouser legs and shirt sleeves and collars all sticking out, like they were dancing and got stuck in the air. The water is stuck in the taps on the toilet. She's stone cold now, her little face like the marble statues in the chapel, all wrapped up in the christening shawl in Da's arms on the steps.
Why did I write the book? I wrote the book because from a very early age, at the age of 8, living on Kilfenora Road, I was very much aware of the inequality between men and women. As young as that, I remember one neighbour jumping out of her bedroom window into the front garden and being taken away to hospital and asking my mother why. And she said, to avoid her husband. Now, as I went through life, I couldn't but become a feminist because of the things I saw with my own eyes. And I had hoped that people more talented than I was would eventually write a book. So I put it off for many years to see would someone else cover the period of time that I grew up in and write something about the corruption of the church and the corruption of society that I grew up in. And Jennifer's book covers around the 60s, and it brought back so many memories to me. She talks about Greek Street. I was the social worker for Greek Street in life, that one of the greatest problems was that women couldn't regulate the number of babies they would have. And therefore, I opened the first family planning clinic in Ireland. And I'm very proud of that. But to show you again the innate ignorance of people around the issue of family planning. We smuggled on a regular basis. I used to buy from London Rubber in London over to Portadown, and every second Saturday I would go up and smuggle the stuff over the border. And I was stopped in Balbriggan at a checkpoint for the IRA, but they found that I had 40,000 condoms in my car. And I explained to them, they were in my possession, they were for my own personal use. And under Article 9 of the Treaty of Rome, I challenged them. And I just said, well, for fuck's sake, have a nice weekend. And they did. And to show you again, we were coming through Dublin Airport another time, and one of my women friends was bringing a suitcase full of diaphragms. And she was dragging it through, nothing to declare. The young customs officer decided he'd check her case. And she lifted it up and he opened it, and she sees all these diaphragms of different sizes. But being a good Catholic lad, he didn't know what he was looking at. So he said to her, "Madam, what are they?" And she said, "Jam pot covers." Certainly, madam. And through she went. Then, of course, I think I sometimes feel I'm glad I said the things I did, but I also feel sad that maybe I didn't say enough. I appeared on the Late Late Show in 1967 And on the panel was Ulrich O'Connor, Senator Sean Brosnan, who was Secretary of the INTO at the time, Dr. Cyril Daly, Paddy Crosby from the school around the corner, and myself. And the one that was supporting me on the panel was Dr. Cyril Daly. And I was opposing corporal punishment in schools and the abuse of our children. And I was made out to be, I was called a liar. Dave Bourne thought I was a crank. And as the programme was coming to an end and the camera came over to me, I said, as I sit here tonight, the Irish Christian Brothers are abusing our children. And when the music came on, the programme ended, a man came up in the audience and punched me in the nose. Fair enough, he's entitled to that. But many years later, I found it very sad that there were so many other people as well as me who knew what was going on with the Irish Christian Brothers and our priests and stood silently by. To me, greatest evil, as Edmund Burke would say, is for good people to do nothing. I did for it to say that I succeeded in having the law changed where corporal punishment is no longer allowed in our schools. I didn't write the book then because, first of all, I didn't feel I had the talent. I was a person who could start organisations and then move on and start something else when other people more talented than me would develop them, such as the doctors in the clinics and other more talented people. But however, to show you the tragedy of life in those days and that people swept under the carpet, a doctor in Skerries contacted me one day to say that a little girl had come to him with kidney injuries that had been inflicted on her in school in Skerries, and that he felt we should do something about it. So we went down and we investigated it, and we spoke to her parents. She was one of 11 children. Her father was a self-employed motor mechanic. And it was an open and shut case against the late teacher who had inflicted the damage. And the father couldn't proceed with the case because the parish priest called to his house and said if he proceeded against the teacher, not another car would cross his garage door. And of course, that made me realise that this man had children still to go into the school and so on. And they were totally, they had no possibility of standing up to